Am I now not muted? I seem to not be muted anymore. All right, my name is Charlie Minato. Welcome to Half Wheel's second day of live technical issues. It would not be a live show without it. So, we're here to unveil the top 25 and hopefully have working microphones. And we're going to switch this up today. Patrick Legreed is in Phoenix, Arizona. How are you doing this morning, Patrick?
I'm doing well, thank you.
I was hoping that you would have
How are you, Charlie?
a little bit more to say.
Can you
Brooks
opine?
Whittington.
Oh, sorry, you want me to vamp a little bit is what you're saying.
No. Brooks, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great, Charlie.
This afternoon.
It's wonderful here. Nice and crisp, sunny day, no clouds.
It's going to be 71 apparently today.
No, it's not.
That's what the board says. Board doesn't lie.
Lying its ass off.
Except when we do make it lie. Anyways, we're here for the top 25. This is what that logo looks like. Hopefully our audio doesn't cut out when we do this. We're not going to mess around too much beforehand. But how about each of us take about 25 seconds to explain what you're smoking? We're going to start again with Patrick.
Yeah, so I am smoking a Hoya de Nicaragua. This is the Numero Uno, the Ambassador, which is the commercial version of the cigar that was given out at Drew Estate Hoya de Nicaragua events back in 2018, and that went on to become our cigar of the year that year. I don't know how old this is, but it's been in a sort of one of these set aside for a good day bags, and this is about as good a day as any. So it's smoking it up, and seemingly so far so good. So
Brooks.
Yes. I am smoking the Tatuaje Mummy Redux 5. Original one of these was released 2012. Long time ago. According to my review, anyway. And you're looking like you don't believe me.
No. I got to solve another issue.
But thought I'd open it up. I did just a Redux on this recently, and within the last little while. And wanted to smoke another one, see how it was doing.
I can't see because there's so much shit in between this table, but what cigar did you absolutely demolish with your cutter before that?
That was another one.
So you've got your one
I
for
did
two.
not, to be clear, this was not demolished with my cutter. This was a problem that the wrapper had before I cut it, and it just made it worse. But maybe I'll smoke that next if I run out of things to smoke.
It made a noise that was concerning. I have not lit this up yet, but I'm going to try to successfully cut this Natura Petite Altura? Petite Altura, yeah. Which I think will probably get mentioned later on in the show. But probably if you're a Natura fan. Not as a top 25 cigar, but I do think it's going to have some sort of tie-in. So let's see. Why don't we get started with our first annual tradition, typos for charity. Here's the deal. I went through it last night and found one more typo. So if you see a typo on the screen, you're the first one to leave a comment, you have a United States address, we will send you a prize pack. I got to leave the comment on either Facebook or YouTube during the broadcast, so you have about an hour to identify one. Any sort of typo counts. Last year, I don't think that we had anyone identify a typo, and if that happens again, then we will donate to a local food bank here in Dallas. So, see a typo, let us know. For those of you that are new here to Half Wheel, in our top 25, the process is not any different than what we've done in, I don't know, at least the last 10 years. So the way this works is that throughout the year, Tuesdays through Sunday, we review cigars in a manner where one of the three of us, either Brooks, Patrick, or myself, will review a cigar. We smoke three of the same cigar. So let's say I am reviewing this Petite Altura from Natura. That would mean that, let's say on Friday, today, I smoke one of them, and then Saturday I smoke another one, and Sunday I smoke another one, and then maybe on Tuesday you read the review, and the score is based on the three cigars I smoked. It means that Brooks and Patrick did not smoke the cigar, at least not for review. And that is how we publish the review. Any cigar that is new, and that would mean any cigar that came out in either 2024 or 2025 that was reviewed in 2025, with the exception of the three cigars from Holy Grail Week in January, it is relevant. Whatever the case is, there's 196 cigars, I think, in total that were eligible that could have been considered for the top 25 list if they scored high enough. And that bar is a 91, which is oddly where that number's been. This year, there were 26 cigars that received a 91-point score that would have qualified. And then what we do is we buy 5 more of the cigars. And if let's say this Natura gets a 91, then that would mean that we buy 5 more of them. Brooks gets 1 to smoke and score. Patrick gets 1 to smoke and score. And then Brian Burt, who's going to be in the comment section, I'm sure, trying to win that prize pack, will also get 1. He used to review cigars for us and still helps us out with a variety of projects, including the top 25. We then take all 4 of those scores, and each one of them is weighted the same. So despite the fact that I smoked 3 cigars and Brooks only smoked 1, our scores count the same, and they count the same as Brian's and Patrick's. And we put them into a spreadsheet. No one knows what the other people are scoring or how the other people are scoring these cigars. And then once all the scores are in, which I believe took place last Thursday is when the last one showed up, the spreadsheet gets revealed to all of us. It is sort of as interesting of a surprise to us as it probably will be on this this live show, albeit with more Spanish mispronunciations. So that is the process of how we do this. And the process of how we do this live show is pretty simple. I think Brooks is going to start us, and
yes, indeed. So the number 25 cigar on this year's list is the Davidoff Escurio 10th anniversary. Now, the original Escurio line debuted in 2015. It was the second release in Davidoff's Discovery series, that series started with Nicaragua, Davidoff Nicaragua in 2013. On paper, the blend of this cigar is actually extremely similar to the original version. However, there is at least one very unique difference, and that is the fact that one of the Dominican filler tobaccos was actually aged in bourbon barrels, not the case with the original version. Now, I don't mind saying I wasn't a huge fan of the original Escurio blend when it was released. Thankfully, this new cigar is quite a bit better in just about every aspect. It's more complex, it's more refined, and it's just really more enjoyable overall. Charlie, did you dislike the original Escurio as much as I did?
I don't really recall. I don't think.
When did you stop beating? Oh,
sorry. I think Patrick did the original review, so I'm not really sure. But I don't think I disliked it as much as a lot of people did. I will say I sort of was surprised when the press release showed up and was like, oh yeah, it's been 10 years since they've done Escurio. That reminded you that it's been 2026, 10 years since they've done Yamasa. So I would expect at some point we're going to see a Yamasa 10th anniversary cigar. I do have some notes here about Davidoff top 25 list.
No
information that you actually don't know, Brooks. So
I do not, probably.
Since 2013, which is our first list, Davidoff has made the top 25 every year except 2019, and that means that it has been on the list every year since 2020, and that streak is the longest active streak that Brian Burt put together this wonderful spreadsheet that a lot of these random factoids are going to come from. I will say this, as we get through the sort of 21 through 25 cigars, the cigars that are on this portion of the list tend to be ones where the panel is quite split, where maybe 1 or 2 people really like the cigar, and then the other people, it's not to say that they thought the cigar was bad, but in the context of the top 25 list where we're talking about our highest absolute scores from the year, it's not sort of at that bar, and that is why this cigar is where it's at. It will sort of let you know when we're getting out of that range and into sort of more of when we have a consensus, and by the way, consensus on Monday. So I'm going to take Brooks off the screen, going to take some comments off the screen, and we're going to move on to our number 24 cigar, which is the CLE PCA exclusive 2025. This is a cigar that uses a Cameroon seed wrapper that is grown by the Oro family in Honduras, but it is probably the least heralded of the bunch. Certainly, I think the JRE Cameroon cigars, probably because they're branded as like, hey, these have Cameroon in them, are probably more notable than this CLE PCA exclusive. But as someone that enjoys and has long enjoyed the African Cameroon varietal, I found more similarities probably in this cigar than any of the other Honduran Cameroon cigars with actual Cameroon. I remember many, many years ago, I was on a trip with some other media members, like OG media members, Jerry Cruz, Brian Hewitt, Barry Stein, and we were sitting around at La Aurora talking about Cameroon, and I believe it was David Jones, but it could have been someone else on that trip, described Cameroon as having this sweetness on the tongue, but a very sharp pepper in the retrohale. And I think that is the simplest description of Cameroon. I found some of that here. I also noticed a lot of tartness on the lips. Before I turn it over to you, Patrick, because I know you've got some interesting facts about this cigar, or about how it's sort of performed or CLE's performed. One last thing to say here. When I was looking at the numbers, if you were to take the average score from 25, that Davidoff Escurio, and then the average score from 23, that is the largest gap between sort of 3 cigars or 3 spots on the list. This one fits right in the middle of it, but just to sort of give you an idea, we have pretty defined differences between 23, 24, and 25. When we get to like 11, 12, 13, 14, we're talking about tenths of a point, hundredths of a point all the time. Maybe not so much here. Patrick, I know you've got some interesting facts here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you touched on most of the flavor stuff. I continue to be impressed with how Honduran tobacco has evolved, both in terms of processing and the seeds that are being used and maybe where it's growing, things like that. It continues just to fascinate me as a growing area. But you talked about, where the range of scores is. Thanks to our colleague Brian Burt, who put together a wonderful spreadsheet for us. This little interesting nugget came up looking at the historical data, and that's that CLE has only made our list in odd numbered years. And not sure why that might be, but just one of the funky quirks of the list. Throughout the show, you're also going to hear us saying a lot about this is the only cigar on the list to do blank. And in this case, it's the only PCA exclusive cigar to make it to the list this year. So spoiler alert for those who were looking for other cigars to make the list. It's kind of an interesting thing because a few years ago, it seemed like the idea of doing these PCA exclusive cigars to get retailers to the trade show was a really big thing, was really getting pushed. And it's sort of dwindled a little bit. CLE may be, I don't want to say one of the companies that embraces it most right now, but they certainly do. Tatuaje just shipped their PCA exclusive from the 2025 show, which was back in April. So that's, 8.5 months, give or take. Christoph still does one, I believe. So it's a dwindling category, and it just kind of got us thinking about the whole PCA exclusive thing and where that category is going to go moving forward, if they move the needle, if they get people to the show, and then sort of the quality of the cigars themselves, and if there's something that could land on this list in the first place. But enough about that. It's time to move on to the number 23 spot, and that goes to the Liga Privada Unico Serie Year of the Snake from Drew Estate. This is the latest in their Zodiac series, which you should all know by now, celebrates the Lunar New Year. In terms of what got this cigar on the list for me, as the one that reviewed it, I kind of kept going back to this Brazilian tobacco in the filler, as it seemed like for some reason it was the most unique of what I was tasting. I'm not exactly sure what it was doing, but it was sort of seemingly kind of brightening and enhancing the entire experience. And what I really liked about this, the first third I thought was some of the best puffs of any cigar I'd had all year, both because it was rooted in the core of the kind of Liga Privada earthy, peppery, really rich profile, but it also had this brighter end to it that, as I kind of explained, really felt like it was a symphony of flavors that was covering just a whole bunch of the flavor wheel. So that's at least what did it for me. And again, as I mentioned throughout the year, or throughout the countdown, you're going to hear us say this is the only cigar on the list that blank. And Brooks, this is one of those. Do you know what's unique about this cigar?
I do, because I wrote it down this morning. Interestingly, by the way, I agree with you on the first third. Definitely the best of this cigar, in my opinion. Interestingly, this is the only cigar on this year's list that was not distributed in the U.S.
And that's because it went to COH Cigars in Hong Kong. So,
nice little thing there. All right, here we go. Number 22 is Awakening from Avowed Cigar Company. Now, Avowed was founded by the team behind the amazing smallbatchcigar.com. And the cigar company debuted last year with 3 different lines. Awakening is the company's first limited edition. And I'd be remiss if I did not point out how unusual it is that a company places a cigar on our top 25 list in the same year that it debuted on the market, because that doesn't happen very often. I'm not sure it's happened at all, in fact. Maybe it has. Yes, it has, but not very many times. I didn't write that down. With that said, I really like this blend, especially the first third, and found it to be extremely well balanced and full of flavor. Yes, it could have benefited from more body and strength. It's a fairly mild cigar, but the company knocking one out of the park like this on this debut the year is a rare occurrence. Patrick.
Yeah, I think the consensus on this one was sort of a mild in terms of strength, but really still flavorful, enjoyable cigar. I personally, again, another one, I love the first third, and I feel like I'm going to say that a bunch over the course of the countdown. It feels like cigars that have a really good start have a much easier chance of landing on the list or just scoring well in general, as opposed to a cigar that maybe starts a little funky or a little out of balance and then tries to correct. At least that's sort of my experience. What I found also really interesting about this is the wrapper. It's an Ecuadorian hybrid that's called Capa Marron. Hasn't been grown for apparently 10 years or so, according to the company, and they were only able to procure about 4 bales of that tobacco for the wrapper. Again, I'm always fascinated to get to try new varieties, new growing regions, whatever it may be. So this was an interesting one for me. This is also, again, another cigar that gets a first from us. This is the first cigar from Klaus Kellner's Kellner Cigars Factory to make the list. So congratulations to Klaus and the team down there. With that, we move to number 21, the Umbagog Bronzeback Robusto. Now, this is from Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, and I absolutely love the fact that Steve Saka calls this just an unpretentious cigar geared for the outdoors, as while it's not necessarily in opposition to how he positions his other cigars, it is a bit of a departure from a guy who produces cigars like Sin Compromiso and $100 Unicorns. This hit my palate as really sort of an everyday cigar, but I say that in the best possible way. It is an everyday cigar. It's just a really, really good one, at least for my palate. It's not trying to do cartwheels. It just delivers this solid, reliable, enjoyable profile. It's kind of earthy, rich flavors. It's not really distracting. And it also manages to do so while being wallet friendly. Now, I know there's some disagreement on the list and kind of where it fell and how it hit everyone's palates. Charlie, you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So as I mentioned in the Davidoff Escurio, the cigars in these spots are definitely ones where we have a split panel. I think that this may just not be the Dunbarton blend for me. I reviewed the original size. I think I probably liked that one better, but I went back and reread my review this morning of that, and I was just like, I for what Saka said he wanted the cigar to be, like, it seems great. You just sort of, you bring a few to a tailgate or to, a fishing trip or whatever, and you want a cigar that's just going to perform without you having to think about it, and it's not going to be, as you mentioned, sort of this super complex thing. But for our reviews, where I'm sitting in this room for 2 hours smoking these cigars and not, pairing them with anything or talking to anyone during it, like it is occasionally a bit boring. I will say that this is the second least expensive cigar on the list, so there's at least that going for it in terms of superlatives. And I think 2 of you guys really liked it. So even though I was a little bit closer to sort of thinking this was an above median cigar, but a below top 25 cigar, I'm not alone, I guess, in that. And certainly it scored well enough to get on here and well enough to get in, out of the very bottom of the list. So with that, and my backhanded compliments finished, we're going to move on to the number 20 cigar. It is the Liga de Reyes Salomon from Raíces Cubanas Cigars USA. And this is probably one of the more Honduran-forward blends on the list. It's a Honduran wrapper. It's got 2 binders. One of them is from Nicaragua, but the other one is from Honduras. And then there's Honduran fillers from the Jamastran Valley and Trojas. In the filler, Raíces Cubanas is best known as a factory, probably for making cigars for Alec Bradley, Illusione, Viaje, and many, many others over the decades, and has recently launched its own brand, and this was the first limited edition from the brand. Liga de Reyes is one of the regular production lines that launched in November of 2024. A little fun fact here is that at $13.50, definitely not $9.50 because inflation. $13.50. The cigar that finished number 20 last year, which was the Postania Connecticut Corona Gorda, also had the same exact MSRP. So it was interesting to see that. I got a lot of core cigar flavors, sort of woody, spicy, earthy. but also really enjoyed the tartness on this blend. Brooks, do you? I have one last fact. This cigar had the most variability of any cigar on the list, so we're going to mention this throughout. And so when we say variability, what that means is if you take its range for those of you that took some statistical classes, but if you took the highest score that one of the four of us gave it, and you took the lowest score that one of the four of us gave it, and you subtracted that, this has the largest number of any cigar on the list. So you could think of it as the place where we disagree the most, at least amongst the person who liked it the most and the person who liked it the least. Now that I got out of the way, Brooks, do you have any thoughts on the flavor?
Oh, I do. I have a couple of interesting notes thanks to Brian Burt. Raíces Cubanas also won our new company of the year earlier this week. And in addition, the cigars that are produced at the Raíces Cubanas factory have made our top 25 list 8 different times. So, interesting notes there. Now, coming in at number 19 is the Mirafel cigar Creation Liberté. Maybe. I mean, that's a cigar, but I don't. This limited edition was created by the company as a way to support different cigar organizations around the world, and all the profits from the cigars were donated to various organizations. Now, the cigars are covered in Mirafel's signature Cameroon wrapper, and there are 2 cigars in every coffin. However, these cigars are not cheap. They are both limited and very expensive. There were less than 1,200 cigars released worldwide, and each cigar has an MSRP of $120. Now, I found this blend to have an abundance of woody notes combined with some really overt nuttiness and a little bit more white pepper than I expected. It's also distinct toasted marshmallow sweetness on the retrohale that really increased the complexity and the enjoyment for this cigar for me. Did you find any of the same, Charlie?
The same,
yes, same exact
marshmallow
notes.
notes?
Exact same notes, yes.
I'd have to go back and look.
I know that you didn't necessarily like this as much as some of the other Mirafel releases. Is that correct?
Apparently.
I think you said that in your review.
Did I review this?
A review.
I don't know if I reviewed
Somewhere.
this. This is a good indication of kind of where we're at. Yeah, I think, the Mirafel cigar Double Richard, or Richard Double Robusto, sorry, that won our cigar of the year a few years ago. That was
Better cigar.
that was fantastic. Yeah, but we're talking about I don't know how many cigars that we are going to review in the next 3 years that are going to live up to that. So,
Right.
That's when you're number one, it stands out. So probably not, would be my guess. I don't really remember what cigars I was reviewing last week. Well, I sort of do because it was gigantic and almost knocked me on my ass. But anyways, I have some Mirafel facts. This is, as I mentioned, the Mirafel Richard Double Robusto won Half Wheel's Top 25, I believe, 2 lists ago. And this is the third Mirafel cigar in 3 years to make it onto the list. At $120 per cigar, this is the most expensive cigar on our top 25 this year. And I mentioned that variability score a second ago. This has the second largest variability between scores. So, and quite frankly, that's a lot of what's going to be in this sort of middle range. You're going to see some pretty wide-ranging scores. And yeah, so I'm going to take Brooks off the screen. We're going to move on to number 18, and it is the Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust Year of the Duque. And we have Chris in the chat. So that is Chris's face, and this is a cigar that was made for Chris. There are a lot of Zodiac Series cigars. It is a phenomenon that you can credit or blame on Davidoff. It is very odd that it is caught on. It's not really caught on in the liquor world, but for whatever reason, the cigar makers love these Zodiac Series things. And we're seeing some that are taking different approaches rather than doing, this year was the year of the horse. Rather than doing that, Dunbarton has decided that it's just going to find someone, or in this case for 2026, 2 people who are close to the company and mean something to the company, and use this release to honor them. And Chris was the inaugural winner. So Steve Saka asked Chris what cigars he really liked from the company's portfolio, and Chris apparently said Sobremesa Solida and Todos los Dias. And then Saka went to Hoy de Nicaragua and blended this cigar, which came out. And Chris is someone who can be seen at Dunbarton events, all around the country, and not just here in mainland, but also in Hawaii. But we see Chris every year at the PCA Convention Trade Show, where he's always in the Dunbarton booth helping them out. And I find it really interesting. Saka said for the upcoming 2026 releases, because there are 2 of them, that the way this works is he asks them like what cigars they like, and then Saka blends them, and they don't get to taste the cigars until they come out. And so it's interesting that you have a cigar named for you that you had some input in, but don't really have any control. Before I turn this over to Patrick, this is a cigar that had the lowest construction score, average construction score on any of the cigars on the list. 3 of us noted we had burn issues. Flavor-wise, it would have performed higher, but was definitely held back. It wasn't like it was like awful burn, but again, we're talking about 25 really, really good cigars, and so even just a few issues can sort of pummel the cigar down the list. But congratulations to Dunbarton and certainly to Chris on this fantastic release.
Yeah, I certainly love the flavor progression, and one of the words I use is it makes these kind of flavor swerves as it burns, and just starts off kind of sweet and spicy, at least in my recollection of it, and then the final third really seems to just open the cigar up, bringing in kind of this savory. I mean, it's savory and tart and meaty, combined, keeping the sweet and spicy in there as well. It's really, for me, it was a cigar that hit a lot of spots on the flavor wheel. It's even hard to kind of summarize our notes into something cohesive, because there were just so many flavor notes mentioned amongst the 4 of us, both in sort of broad, more general terms, and then in more specific terms. So real interesting, fascinating project that Steve Saka has come up with. Certainly intrigued to see where the others come and what they taste like, and sort of where this goes. And also, again, I gave some praise to the Punch brand for taking a different approach to the Zodiac series, and so I think that extends here as well. So props to Steve and the Dunbarton team for using what is, as Charlie mentioned, has become a real trend, or whatever you want to call it, in the cigar industry of the Zodiac New Year, but just giving a different approach and honoring individuals with cigars. So on that note, we move up to number 17, and that comes from La Flor Dominicana. It's the Suave Natural Maximo. Now, the Suave was LFD's first line just over 30 years ago, but those past years, let me back up a sec. It was originally called the La Flor Dominicana Premium line, would get renamed to Suave. 2025, it got a rework, both with new packaging and a new blend. And, for a company that prides itself on its fuller-bodied, full-strength offerings, and that's what the company's kind of known for, they can certainly make a very enjoyable, flavorful, mild cigar that isn't a gut punch, despite offering a just absolute ton of flavor. They did both a natural and a Maduro version. The natural one scored higher. Brooks, I know you reviewed the Maduro, but I'm kind of intrigued to hear your thoughts maybe on the 2 cigars, but also, when you think about a La Flor Dominicana and what they're known for, and then smoking this cigar, kind of how that sits with you.
Yeah, so I like you. I was a little surprised that even it's not a very strong cigar at all, but it's flavorful for sure. And as you mentioned, I happen to be the reviewer of the Maduro blend, and this is a much better, not much better, but it's definitely a better cigar for me. It's creamier, it's significantly sweeter on the palate and the retrohale, and it's just a better choice overall. If given the choice, I'd choose this one every single time. So it's a very good cigar, and certainly something that La Flor Dominicana needed in terms of having a little bit of an option for those that aren't looking for just overt strength in the blends, which most of theirs do. All right, now going to number 16 is the Davidoff Limited Edition 2026 Year of the Horse. It's a long name. Now, I don't need to explain the entire Chinese zodiac calendar thing. Charlie did a pretty good job there. But I should note that out of the 3 Vitolas that Davidoff released for this version of the Year of the Horse, this is the most accessible one and the most likely that you are to see at your local brick and mortar. This is actually the second time Davidoff has released the Year of the Horse. The first one was in 2013. However, this new version is a different Vitola, and according to the company, the tobacco used in the blend has a combined 43 years of age, for whatever that's worth. I love the cigar. I found it full of peanut butter, cedar, toasted bread notes, and some wonderful honey sweetness on the retrohale. Thankfully, I didn't taste much of that musky mushroom flavor that I get with some Davidoff cigars that I'm not necessarily a fan of, and that's probably why I scored it so highly. One quick last note. This is the only, my note here is covered up. This is the only release this year that made both the packaging top 10 and the top 25 lists.
Speaking
Charlie.
of making the list, so I mentioned earlier that Davidoff has been on nearly every one of our top 25 lists since this site launched in 2012. And I was interested to see that this is only the 6th Zodiac Series cigar that has made the top 25. That was a very surprising stat. We've reviewed most, but not all of them, and a couple of them. I think the Year of the Rabbit actually made it twice because we've reviewed some of those flagship cigars before as well. I would have expected the Zodiac Series to have done better, quite frankly, but, you know, this was another great cigar. I really enjoyed this quite a bit. It was a nice cigar, one of the last cigars I smoked in 2025 before New Year's Eve. It's the second Davidoff on the list, and if my memory's correct, I think this is the 3rd year in a row that Davidoff has placed at least 2 cigars on our top 25. So, moving on, or no, sorry, not moving on. So I'm going to let Patrick get on the screen here. We're going to take a little break here. And Patrick, I know you can sort of go through this breakup, and I'm going to pull up a question that I'm going to have you answer, if you don't mind.
Yeah, for sure.
Well.
So here again, here's the first 10, numbers 25 through 16, for those that may have joined late or just otherwise missed one. Obviously, congratulations to everyone on this list. Fantastic cigars that are definitely worth trying out. And if you didn't hear Charlie mention it, for those curious, the consensus, which is the sort of compilation of all the top 25 lists from around the media world, will be coming out Monday at noon Central Time, so be sure to tune in for that. We got a question here. How purposeful is it, in your opinion, for a cigar to have a great first third and then fall off, or the reverse? I don't want to get semantic here. Purposeful is kind of an interesting word. I think it's incredibly important for a cigar to have a great first third. You know, it's sort of a play on the you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Here's the flip side of that, though, and I noted this in, gosh, at least one cigar that's on this list, where, I think multiple times over the course of the year, where the first third was fantastic, and then the second and final thirds really fall off, and you're kind of wondering if you're using that initial momentum to kind of carry it. I mean, there was a cigar where I said it starts like a symphony orchestra, and then 80% of the musicians walk off stage, and you're left with, you know, like a 4 or 5 piece group, and they're still good. They're just not the full symphony. I do think it's harder for a cigar that has a less than ideal first third to sort of claw its way back. It doesn't mean it isn't possible. I'm sure there are ones where it happens, and you know, you get those first couple of puffs and they feel like they're all going in different directions. But if it was me, I would certainly prefer to have a great first third and see where it goes from there. Charlie, any thoughts on that? Or
I mean, I just told Brooks that we needed to move on, so I'm going to keep it brief.
No.
I will say it is worth pointing out, though, that we score the thirds equally. So it's not as if,
Right.
Apparently that's what Brooks wanted to say. So it's not as if it matters. I do think, and, you know, certainly I'm sure you'll see this in reviews as I muse about it, but, like, I do think that there are things that happen to a cigar as it burns down. There's, like, moisture release happening. There's pH changes. There's a lot of science stuff that is well above my head that I don't think has really been researched, at least not in a manner that I've seen very well, about why cigars might taste better in the first third. And it is a topic that if you actually are somebody with a science background and you know, have some thoughts on it, and certainly if you have research, I'd love to read it. I may not understand a single bit of it, but it is what it is. All right, so as Patrick mentioned, those are the first 10 cigars on the list. I'm going to take Patrick off the screen. We're going to move on to number 15, and that is the Plasencia Alma del Cielo Amense, which is totally not how you pronounce it. I had it better this morning. It is an absolute tongue twister, especially for someone that failed Spanish multiple times. This is another sort of in the flagship Plasencia release, sort of joining the Alma del Fuego and the Alma Fuerte. It is a cigar that is noted for its elevation, which Brooks is going to describe more because he got the full presentation from Plasencia. But this particular Vitola, you can't really tell on screen, but this is the box press 6x60 hexagon Vitola. So it's a box press cigar, Most box press cigars have like 4 panels. This one has 6 defined panels, hence the hexagon. One thing that was interesting when reading over our tasting descriptions from the 4 staff members was a lot of mentions of acidity. So somebody distinctly called out Italian white wine. That sounds like a Patrick LeGree tasting note if I've ever seen one. I mentioned, I believe it was probably me because this seems like a Charlie tasting note, ketchup, but acidic ketchup specifically. And one note here, this was a pretty close battle between 15 and 16. I think like the 3rd closest on the list. Brooks.
Yes.
Do you want to tell people about the elevation and the unique farm here?
Right. So I actually covered the booth at PCA last year. Yeah. And I found this to be fascinating. Besides just the Vitola, which I think it's pretty cool. The hexagon's pretty cool. I got to say, visually, it's very cool. It's a fascinating release for me because some of the tobacco in the blend was grown on a farm in the Condega region that is approximately 3,500 feet above sea level. That's not normal at all when you're talking about growing tobacco. According to the company, the combination of colder temperatures and higher elevation gives the tobacco a unique flavor profile, and I can attest to that. I think it had something different in it compared to, most cigars, if you will. Interestingly to me, this is not the only new cigar that has tobacco grown at higher than normal elevations. Some of the tobacco in cigars from Natura Cigar Company, which you're smoking right now, is grown at 4,500 feet above sea level.
I can taste the difference.
Albeit in the Dominican Republic instead of Nicaragua, as the Plasencia is. So, very interesting. I wonder if any other companies will actually do that as well in the future. Who knows? All right. Going in at number 14 is the El Pulpo, the squid. Now, this is the latest addition to the company's El Pulpo line, which debuted in 2023. It's an unusual vitola that instantly reminded me of the Opus X BBMF, although the squid is box-pressed, and the flag on the cap is flat instead of round, which the company says makes it look more like tentacles of the cigar's namesake. The cigar really made me sit up straight when I was smoking it. I was almost shocked by the amount of flavor that was in this cigar. Things like salted pretzels, roasted peanuts, charred meat, caramel sauce, just an amazing array of flavors. But they were vibrant. They were, in your face. They just kept coming. The profile seemed to change so many times as I was smoking it that it almost made me exhausted. One interesting note, this is the first time that Artisanal del Tobacco has placed in our top 25 list, and it's a hell of a cigar. Patrick, I know you like this cigar almost as much as I did. What did you think?
Yeah, I think you kind of covered the bulk of the notes on it, but I will say one of my favorite comments about this cigar actually came from you, and it was what was the worst part of the cigar? And you wrote that it was over too quickly. And I thought, like, that's an interesting thing to say. This cigar must be tiny. No, it's a 6.5 by 60 pressed Solomon that took you about 2.5 hours to smoke, which is two things I would not necessarily expect or a comment I would not expect to read from a cigar of that size and that time, because that definitely seems like it's a lot. But you're right. I mean, it's one of these cigars that it takes 2-3 hours to smoke, and it's just so packed with flavor that you really, even if you're getting that amount of time out of it, you still want more from it.
Yeah, normally a cigar this size, I don't feel that way necessarily. This was not one of them. It's an amazing cigar.
Yeah, there's definitely something about this that sort of bucks that trend where, again, it's one thing if you're smoking like a 5x44 and it's like, oh, I really could go for another one. When I looked back and realized the size of this one and how long it took you to smoke, and that you still wrote that the worst part was that it was over too quickly, I knew there was something special about this one. But with that, we move on to number 13, and it is the third entry from Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. It's the Sobremesa Solita Red. This is one that Steve Saka said he began working on about 3 years ago as effectively kind of a replacement for the Sobremesa Solita Lonsdale Cervantes Fino. Again, that was the original Sobremesa line. They added the term Solita to differentiate it from the other extensions that were starting to come out. And, again, I can't say that I track my scores as the year goes by. And a lot of times looking back, I have a tough time really picking what my favorite cigar was. But when I do get to look at the scores, it's like, oh wow, I really did like that one. This was not just only my highest scoring cigar, but it was the highest individual score sheet for any cigar on the list. Now, that said, we were a fairly divided panel on this one, even though Steve Saka said that he wanted to take a cigar that he thought was great and make it perfect. This had the second widest range of scores between the highest and lowest score in a single cigar. But that said, Charlie, I mean, people that liked it and in both on the panel and externally found a lot of things to like about it. Your thoughts on this one?
Well, my thoughts on what you just said was, yes, this is our Reader's Choice Awards. So each year for the last 3 years, we have asked our readers to submit their nomination for their favorite cigar of the year, and then we whittle it down to 5 or 6 cigars and as finalists to get the most nominations. And this was the winner this past year. So congrats to Dunbarton for getting that award. And you can go have a flame war in our comment section over there or in the Dunbarton Company of the Year post as well, which seems to be an active place to leave comments insulting one another. The other thing I would say here, it occurred to me yesterday when we were doing the walkthrough of this, Steve Saka seems to have this trend where he introduces a cigar line and then is like, you know what? I'd like to make this stronger. So this, as you mentioned, is a stronger version of the original Sober Mesa. There was Todos los Dias, which when I thought about it again later last night, I did realize that he blamed that one on Hoya. He said that like, they made the wrong filler recipe, and so that led to the Todos los Dias Más Fuerte. But there was also Mi Querida and then Mi Querida Triqui Traca. Bronzeback, the Umbagog that was on the list earlier, wasn't explicitly described as like a stronger version of Umbagog, but was described as a different and spicier version of Umbagog.
Right.
So I don't know. It does seem to be some indecisiveness here of like every one of your favorite Dunbarton blends will eventually be blended in a thin ring gauge cigar that's going to be slightly stronger because Steve Saka wants it to be that way. But it is what it is. It's a good cigar, and especially as far as Patrick LeGreet's score sheet was concerned, it's a fantastic cigar. A big, big number that Patrick turned in when he reviewed this. We are not going to move on to number 12, and that is because we have a tie at number 11. So the first one of the two number 11s is the 601 La Bamba Warhead Independence Day from Espinosa Premium Cigars. This is a cigar that is part of the La Bamba Warhead line, which was featured for its packaging, albeit there were 4 La Bamba Warhead releases in 2025. This is the only one that didn't come in the unique bomb-looking packaging, so it's a bit of a different or more standard box with a big American flag on it. And this was a cigar that was introduced. Brooks, I'm totally aware that list is... You keep staring at me like something's going wrong here. We're good.
Okay.
I promise.
All right.
So the La Bamba Warhead Independence Day was marketed as a milder version of the La Bamba Warhead, which was marketed as a stronger version of the 601 La Bamba when it was introduced more than a decade ago. I have mentioned this in multiple reviews. I mentioned it in a Factory of the Year write-up not that long ago. Not this year, but I think last year. There is, in my opinion, there was a clear evolution in AJ Fernandez's blending style. When I first met Abdel, he was someone who was making cigars for a lot of other people, but most of his cigars tended to just be like strength and power and power and power. They had full flavor and they had interesting flavors, but whether it's the seed varietals he grows, the way that he processes tobacco, or the way that he was blending, it was just a lot of like full. Even if you put a Connecticut wrapper on it and was like, this is a mild to medium cigar, I was like, yeah, but it's all about power, and it just seems like you were muting the rest of it to make it mild, and it ended up being this not dull portfolio, but a very monotone portfolio, in my opinion. I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I really started to pick up on a change, and this cigar is an explicit, like, marketed as being a, we're going to take a step back and make it more medium full and really bring out that complexity. I would say that the Artesano del Tobacco, the El Pupo cigar that Brooks was talking about with Patrick a second ago is another prime example of that. And I remember actually talking to the owners of Artesano del Tobacco about this blending evolution. Patrick, you have some interesting notes about this series, which has made the list multiple times before.
Yeah, and I want to first say too, I know this is made by AJ Fernandez at their San Latano factory in collaboration with the team from Espinosa, and I totally agree with you on the whole with the AJ Fernandez comment. But I also, in thinking about sort of the progression of the 601 La Bamba series, it may have one of the most impressive kind of flavor progressions over the series. How they've, used different blends. They took it from a cigar that I remember smoking very early releases of 601 La Bamba and just being like, it's good, but boy, this is just we're just playing bass notes here. And now it's really blossomed out into a much more fully developed flavor profile in more recent releases. So, again, kudos to the entire Espinosa team working with AJ on this one. But you're right. This is the third time in 5 years that a La Bamba Warhead has landed on the top 25 list. In 2021, the La Bamba Warhead 7 placed number 16. And then in 2024, the Warhead 10 finished number 19. So again, congratulations to the Espinosa team on this cigar. And really, they proudly say it's one of their most popular, if not their most popular lines. And it's certainly easy to understand why, especially when looking back at how this line has progressed over the years. So as Charlie mentioned, we do have a tie for the number 11 spot. And the cigar that tied with that Warhead is from West Tampa Tobacco Company. It's the Devil Crab. Now, I remember being engaged by sort of the novelty when I first heard about this cigar, both because of the shape and the inspiration, as it references one of Tampa's most iconic dishes, so much so that the box includes a recipe card for making your own devil crab. Also because this was the second time that West Tampa Tobacco Company has used food as an inspiration. In 2023, it released Boliche Boulevard, which is named for the Cuban dish made from eye-round beef stuffed with ham and served with rice, often compared to a pot roast. Now, like I said in my review, I am certainly not going to say whether or not West Tampa paid proper tribute to the devil crab dish, but they did make a really, really enjoyable cigar, which earned praise for its ability to be balanced between boldness and nuance. As I noted, the final third offered just tons of flavors for my taste buds to lock onto, while also doing this incredible job of maintaining and balancing strength and intensity quite well. Being a good-bodied cigar, but also showing nuance. And maybe, if anything, I thought there were times where the cigar was like so nuanced that if you weren't paying really good due diligence and attention to it, you'd kind of miss it. But again, that's a problem I would love to have, is that there's just too much detail and nuance in a cigar that, as I like to say, I literally can't write the notes down fast enough. Brooks, I know we talked about some firsts. You have a couple of firsts on this cigar as well, right?
Indeed, I do, thanks to Brian Burt. Interesting notes. This is the first cigar from West Tampa Tobacco Company to place on our top 25. Also, the first cigar made at the Garmendia factory to make it on the list. In addition, it's hard to believe, but this is the first tie we have ever had in our top 25 awards. I would not have believed that. I would have thought there had been one before now. All right, coming in at number 10, the Aladino 85 Aniversario Reserva Robusto. Sometimes it takes a little more time than anticipated to actually get a cigar on the market. That was the case with this blend. Originally, the cigar was supposed to be released in 2023 to celebrate the 85th birthday of company founder Julio Eiroa. However, it took until last year for Eiroa to actually be satisfied enough to actually release the cigar. The blend is made entirely of Pinar in Reno. No.
Pinareno.
Charlie's shaking his head because I butchered that. What?
Pinareno.
Pinareno.
Let's just move on.
A varietal known to be delicate and prone to disease, resulting in significantly smaller crop yields. There was a time when I was really not a fan of Honduran tobacco, but JRE and a couple of other companies have really changed my mind over the years, and this cigar is a wonderful example of why that is the case. Patrick?
Yeah, Brooks, 100% on that. Again, I said earlier, I've been fascinated by Honduran tobacco. It is some of my least favorite when it's kind of young and not really processed or aged to a certain amount. It's dry, dusty earth. I get a lot. But when you do it right, and when it's, when it's grown right and processed right, and basically just when it's done right, it offers some amazing flavors and spins. In this case, one of the things that caught the attention of a lot of our group was the retrohales, which were notable for being kind of a distinct sweetness. Two notes that stood out to me from our collective notes: banana custard and Kinder eggs, which I'm not really sure who had the Kinder eggs note, but
That would be me.
that was you. Okay.
I grew up in Germany for a time, and Kinder eggs were really big are really big in Germany.
Okay.
And
I
so
mean, in
it's
1967
a
they
very
were, but-
specific flavor. What?
1967 they were, but
It was not 67, more like 70. It was a long time ago. But one note: the American Kinder eggs not the same as the German, so don't think that they're the same.
And to that last comment, we're all here for Brooks's Spanish.
hold on 1 second. I want to clarify. I'm looking at the band here. I don't think we're missing an N, right?
What?
There's one in on the band.
Yeah. All right. If you're trying to win this typo
You
contest,
got people going crazy on this.
let me know what N you think we're missing, but I think we're good there. And the capitalization thing does not count either.
But yeah, like I say, it's, this was a cigar, really interesting retrohales. I think it's where people tended to latch on. And yeah, like I say, the progress of Honduran tobacco over the last, I don't know, 5 to 8 years maybe, has really been impressive. And not just from the Iroas, from a number of companies that have released cigars with Honduran leaf in it. So on that note, we move up to number 9, and that is the Plasencia Almafuerte Colorado Claro Robusto Corto. Again, another example of a short cigar that just packs tons of flavor. This was one of 2 cigars that kicked off Plasencia's Short Smokes collection, which, when it was released, Nestor Andres Plasencia said that they are honoring the modern smoker's lifestyle, offering moments of indulgence that can be savored fully in less time. And I think that was a darn near perfect summation of what the cigar offered. Again, lots of sweet notes amongst our panel, everything from cinnamon and crumb cake to honeycomb, honey graham cracker. It generated a lot of comments about how much flavor and how many transitions there were for such a small cigar. It also had the highest variability score amongst our panel, meaning the highest and lowest scores for a single cigar. Charlie, I know you are have been diving into the numbers a little bit more than I did. Can you touch on that a little bit more?
I would like to clarify. It's the highest variability within the top 10, I believe.
Sorry. Okay, top 10.
Yeah, I just would like to clarify it. I am probably responsible for that. I'm not responsible. I was the one who experienced probably what led to that, I would say. I lit this cigar up and was very concerned because within like 5 puffs, I noticed that I could see the red cherry like through what little ash had already started forming, and it was not going away for minutes on end, which is usually a sign the cigar is hot enough to not keep puffing on it, and you kind of want to let it cool down. And there were some weird like vegetable flavors for the first like 10 or 15 minutes. And the cigar also kind of wasn't like, it was red, but it wasn't really burning down. And I was unsure if I was like in a dream or something. It was a very bizarre cigar experience. And then it just suddenly fixed itself and was back to being a cigar that there was suddenly a cigar that is not surprising to see here in the top 10. And I get the sense that after that weird sort of 15 minutes, I got a lot of what the 3 of you experienced from start to finish. Another great Vitola, at least minus that 15 minutes, for this blend, which might be my favorite blend within the Plasencia portfolio at the moment, but they certainly have a lot of strong contenders for that. Before we move on to number 8, I would like to give a warning to those of you that are watching on Instagram. My understanding is that in about 5 minutes, that stream is going to come to an end because there are limits about how long we can stream for it. That may have since changed. We don't do this on a regular basis, but the last time we did it, there was an hour limit. So if you get cut off on Instagram, you can tune in on Half Wheel's YouTube page, our Facebook page, or you can go to halfwheel.com and click on the top post, and the YouTube stream is hosted there. With that out of the way, we're going to move on to number 8, and that is the Perdomo Legacy Connecticut Epicure. This is a cigar. It was described as the first cigar that was spearheaded by Nicholas Perdomo III, who is the son of Nicholas Perdomo Jr., the company's founder. Nicholas III made this cigar for Nick Jr.'s 60th birthday. And this is a cigar that is centered around a unique tobacco. So in the 2014 and 2015 harvest, Perdomo crossed a Cuban seed tobacco with a Cameroon seed tobacco and planted it at the Finca La Natalie farm that it has in Nicaragua. And Perdomo, when it introduces new cigars, which is not every year, it seems like every 2 or 3 years they have a new line. And when it has a new line, what it does is it always offers it in 3 different wrapper options. What's interesting here to me is that hybrid seed is used for what's known as the Perdomo Legacy Shade. And normally Shade would mean the Connecticut seed version, but that is not the case here. These are 2 different cigars. So the Legacy Shade, not this cigar, has the hybrid as a wrapper. The Legacy Connecticut, this cigar, and the Legacy Maduro use it as a binder. It's interesting to me to see another Connecticut wrapped cigar here. Brooks, as I add you to the screen, I'm curious to get your opinion, but one last little note here. Of the cigars that are in the top 10, this had the highest low score. So the way I would look at this is this had the highest floor of the cigars that were in the top 10, and it's certainly well-deserving. I really enjoyed this cigar. And Brooks, like I said, curious, you have any thoughts about why we see Connecticut cigars do really well on this list each and every year?
I think that it's just a combination of, I like a lot of sweetness in my cigars, especially on the Retro Hill. I prefer to have a lot of sweetness, and I think that these Connecticut's have typically have that sweetness. Now, this, for me, wonderful cigar, and it really nailed the profile that I think of with a classic Connecticut blend. Abundance of sweetness, abundance of creaminess, all intertwined with some really noticeable but not overwhelming white pepper. I think this would make a great morning cigar. I haven't actually smoked it in the morning with a cup of coffee, but I think it would make a great morning cigar with a cup of coffee, and I really look forward to smoking more of them. It's a really great blend. Also, really mild enough that you can give to somebody who isn't necessarily, a cigar smoker necessarily trying out for the first time. I think it'd be a great cigar to have somebody try for the first time or the first couple of times.
Also, you're the photographer here, although I am the award-winning photographer.
Yes, you have won the award.
Is this like the prettiest looking cigar we got on the list in terms of how it photographs?
Yes, but Connecticut, lighter shades typically photograph better under our light specifically, yes.
I think I mentioned this in the review. The band, Perdomo is one of a handful of companies that really spends a lot of money on its bands. The printing and just how it photographed was absolutely incredible to me. It's not the most detailed band. There are a lot of detail elements, but it just pops in a way that is surprising.
Yeah, if you look at the other, I think we photographed the other blends as well, or one of the other blends. It doesn't look nearly as good in terms of the lighting.
Yeah,
just because of how that the lighter shades really reflect the light a little bit better. That's science that I don't know about. However, number 7 is the Atabey Black Delirios. Now, the first Atabey Black released from Selected Tobacco in 2021 was an NFT, which Charlie tells me stands for non-fungible. Fungible. Are you sure there's no G in there?
Yeah.
And on the end, fungible token that you could not actually smoke or even hold, which is apparently the point. This second Vitola in the line is an actual physical cigar. As is the case with many of Selected Tobacco's products, this cigar is rolled in Costa Rica at their factory there, and then shipped to Spain to age for various amounts of time in numerous lines lined with different types of cedar, oak, and other things. I found the cigar to be insanely complex. Flavors of creamy cashews, coffee beans, toastiness, cinnamon, and molasses sweetness on the retrohale. This is not unusual for Selected Tobacco products for me. I am a huge fan of what they do with the aging. I think it actually makes a huge difference in terms of how the cigars smoke, especially on the secondary and the retrohale. But Patrick, I don't know if you actually agree with me or not, but I wanted to ask.
Yeah, no, I really love what Selected Tobacco, Nelson Alfonso has been doing with aging, creating these rooms with the different types of cedar, French oak, borrowing from the wine world. Interestingly, they had a cigar that won our cigar of the year a couple years ago that was, I thought, just a real shining example of getting that wood kind of oak barrel flavor front and center. I didn't find that to be the case as much here. In fact, were this not an Atabey and were I not aware of what they were doing, I don't necessarily know if I would have maybe picked up on it as strongly, because I think this is a cigar where the flavor of the tobacco shines through more than the flavor of the aging rooms. But again, I just love what they're doing and bringing this this new layer of blending to their cigars.
I agree. The Alfonso, which is the one that won the number 3, won the cigar of the year, I believe. The
Yeah.
Alfonso is a cigar blend that really shows that that aging, better off in terms of the flavor profile. I did find that to be similar to what I tasted here, but and not as strong as you mentioned, which is probably why it's not as high as on the list, at least not for me.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things that I don't want to say Nelson is becoming really identified with that, with the aging and what that does, giving that wood note to it. But again, like I said, I don't remember getting it as prominently here. But on that note, we're also getting into a really interesting section of the list, and I just want to point this out. Cigars 4 through 8 are the tightest range of cigar scores on the list, and the margin is quite literally thousandths of a point separating them. And again, in this one, the flavor really shined brightly, and if judging only by flavor, this would have been in the top 5. So again, it just goes to show how little construction things or little draw issues, can really affect where a cigar lands on the list. But on that note, we have to move on, and we go to the number 6 spot, and that comes from Matilde Cigar Company, and it's the Matilde Special Edition. Now, all the cigars on this list are special, of course, but this cigar has it in the name. It was crafted by Enrique Cejas, inspired by his father, Jose, and was done using Peruvian tobacco in the filler. It's the first time that Matilde has done so, and it was done because Jose Cejas, who ran the factory in La Romana for Altadis, Tobacco de Garcia, was a big fan of Peruvian tobacco. And I have to say, I always have a hard time exactly figuring out how much of a profile is being affected by one leaf or another. But for something about this seemed to just stand above and beyond the normal Matilde releases. Plentiful flavor notes, really complex cigar. I found this kind of flamed, smoky orange peel in the early goings that my taste buds just latched onto, and I absolutely loved. I've been talking about the first third of cigars a lot this year. It was one of the most memorable experiences I had with a cigar this year. Really complex profile again, and again with some notes that I don't usually get from most cigars. Made it a standout. Lots of flavor, layering, woodiness, creaminess, semi-sweet bread, saltiness, all got cited. There was a rich raisin note that was present both on the cold draw and on the retrohales throughout the cigar that got mentioned. Again, for me, I put it somewhere in that like really, really very good to almost kind of epic, thanks to the complexity between the woodiness, the nuttiness, the pepper, and then again this kind of peanut butter oiliness, a little bit of earthiness, fresh croissant, that flamed orange peel. I mean, just the list was forever long, and construction also very good throughout. So congratulations to Tabacalera La Isla. A couple notes on this one. This is the only cigar that got a 92-point rating this year. It came from me. And unfortunately, while the cigar was inspired by Jose Cejas's love of Peruvian tobacco, he passed away shortly after the cigar was released. It came out in October, and Jose passed away early November 2024. So again, I've said a lot of words. Hopefully I left some for you there, Charlie, on the Matilda Special Edition.
Yeah, I do have some interesting factoids. So this is the second time, I believe, that La Isla has made it into the top 10. This is, however, the first time that Matilda has made it onto the list. So congratulations to the Cejas brothers, who run the company, especially Enrique. This had the second most variability of any cigar in the top 10. And again, if you were kind of wondering, Patrick mentioned a lot of the flavor notes that he picked up, and we scored it very, very high flavor-wise. But in terms of like, why is this cigar not in the top 5? We're down to minuscule construction points, and that is really the difference. But as Patrick alluded, 4 through 8 are extremely tight. It's if we had to rank the cigars as opposed to rating the cigars, I don't know what we would have done, because apparently we were almost indiscernible about how we liked each of the cigars in this part of the list. So for those of you that have joined late, Brooks Whittington's going to walk you through some of the cigars in the first 20.
Yeah, so here we are, the first 20 on the list. I'm not going to read them, but you can see here. There's 3 of them from Dunbarton. Tobacco and Trust. Davidoff has 2. Yeah, it's a good list for sure. I'm actually impressed with the number of different Vitolas that are on the list as well. Not just huge or small or anything.
A lot of Salomones. I'd like to clarify. We are fully aware that Isla has
fully
a
aware.
lowercase I in its name, but as has been pointed out, this is all caps going on here today, so that's not going to count for the typo.
Good try though.
Yeah, I mean, that is the type of execution that might get you a job here as the copywriter, but at least the copy editor, I suppose. Number 5. I think that's my turn. Put Brooks off the screen. So into the top 5, and at number 5 is the Angel Cuesta Shade Double Toro. So this is a cigar that dates back, or at least the name, which was probably Angel Cuesta and not the English butchering of Angel there. This is a cigar that was once the official, well, not this particular cigar, but the Angel Cuesta line was once the official cigar of King Alfonso the 13th, a 20th century king of Spain. And it was made by Cuesta Rey, which many of you that have visited J.C. Newman's factory in Tampa will note that there's that big Cuesta Rey sign on the top of it. The Newmans actually bought the Cuesta Rey brand, I believe in the late 1950s, as they moved from Cleveland to their current home in Tampa. As far as this particular cigar goes, I'm going to let Patrick talk a lot about the flavors, but I will tell you that it was the most consistent cigar and the least variable cigar amongst our scores of anyone in the top 25. There was just a half-point difference on the overall scores between the lowest score and the highest score. And so if you want to know, what's separating this cigar from that really tight range of 4 through 8, this is one where I guess if scores are what you're looking for, we were the most consistent, or some would say this was the one we had the consensus the most about. But Patrick, why don't you tell our viewers here about some of the flavors that you picked up?
Yeah, this is a cigar that, again, I hate to position it as a sweet cigar, but it offers a lot of sweet flavors. And to sort of build off of what you talked about or asked Brooks about with the Connecticut's wrap cigar, I do tend to think that some of these lighter wrapper cigars just tend to allow for some more nuance and sort of I don't want to call it a more detailed profile, but in this case, again, things like vanilla pudding, caramel, berry jam, fresh grapefruit was even mentioned, banana, which shows up from time to time. Just another cigar that seems to kind of position itself in this spectrum of the flavor wheel, and generates flavors that I think all of us find very enjoyable, very familiar. I've made the argument for why sweet flavors are preferable as opposed to maybe sour flavors. And as I understand it, there's a little bit of evolutionary history behind that, which was that sweetness was a way to know that something was safe to eat. And so it's naturally become sort of an inherently liked part of the flavor wheel. Notably on this one, this is also the only American-made cigar on the list, coming from the El Reloj factory in Tampa. It's the second time that an El Reloj-made cigar has made the list, joining the Leroy Neiman limited edition, which placed number 8 last year. And just again, it's, we talk about going to cigar factories. I'll be headed to Nicaragua in the coming days for the Puro Sabor Festival. But again, remember, we have a very solid working cigar factory, multiple actually, but a notable one in Tampa, Florida. And if you ever find yourself there, definitely a visit to El Reloj is worth it. So we move up the list once again. The number 4 spot comes from Patina Cigar Company, and it's the Patino Oro de Nicaragua Petit Robusto. Again, I love a cigar with a good backstory as much as I love a cigar with a good flavor profile. The name actually comes from my father's cigar creation that was an exclusive for Casa de Monte Cristo in the Chicago area, debuting around the end of 2014 and then disappearing sometime in 2016 from what we can tell. Mo Mali, who is the creator and owner of Patina Cigar Company, bought the rights to the name, reaching out to Mike and Sam Khalil, the owners of Casa de Monte Cristo in Chicago, and the owners of the Oro de Nicaragua brand. And the reason he wanted to do that is because he wanted to pay tribute to a cigar that he calls, I believe, one of the key cigars that got him interested in both cigars and cigar making. They came to an agreement. Molly purchased the brand. And for him, he was more interested in paying tribute to the name, not trying to recreate the cigar. The blends are different. Mo says he thinks his blend is stronger and fuller than the original. Unfortunately, I don't remember smoking that original blend. Again, it was probably a decade or so ago that it was available. Charlie, do you have any recollections of that one compared to this one?
I don't think I smoked the original one.
Yeah.
This is when somebody's going to be like, "Oh, you rated it at 92." But
I'm pretty
I
sure we
don't-
didn't rate it. I
Yeah.
definitely looked for that. So
I don't think I smoked it. I do remember smoking this cigar, though. I had a string of cigars that I had been tasked with reviewing that just kept having issues. You know, 2 cigars would be good, and then 1 cigar would be plugged, or all 3 of them were having burn issues. And then this cigar showed up, and it was like a revelation of like, hey, turns out if you make a cigar that's got good flavor and is made well and doesn't have burn issues and doesn't have draw issues and is consistent, like that's all you need. You just need to do the basics right and add a little bit of flavor magic. And I'll be quite honest, I'm surprised to see it this high up on the list, not because I didn't like the cigar, but just because my sort of memory of the cigar was like, this just did the basics right in a way that all of the cigars I've been smoking for the last 2 weeks could not do, to the point where I was like, am I really sure that I know how to cut cigars properly? Because I seem to keep screwing up the end results here. I do have some facts about this one. It's the first patina ever, so congrats to Mo. It's the second cigar from Noxa on the list. I believe they've had 10 cigars throughout the years on our top 25 list. And at $10.50, this is the least expensive cigar on the list. We do not have a cigar that is under the $10 price point this year. So as we move into the top 3, I would like to say that, like, if you were to sort of chart out how we scored these cigars, the cigars in the top 3 are all very close, but they are in a very defined tier. 4 and 5 aren't that far behind, and they are close together as well. But there were 3 cigars that really stood out, and I'm going to talk about the first of the bunch, and that is the Padron, a Hammer, and a Dream Natural. This is part of Tobacconist of Greenwich's Rare Find series, as you can see on the secondary band there. Rare Finds, at this point, I think kind of just means that it's a private label for Tobacconist of Greenwich, which is in Greenwich, Connecticut. And lots of retailers get private label cigars or exclusive cigars. We write about some of them, not about most of them. But this is an extension to the Padron Family Reserve line. That's the main band that it wears. And speaking of the bands, like, the packaging here screams that this was probably not made by Padron. It seems very likely that the packaging was made by the team at Tobacconist of Greenwich. It is extremely ornate. Glossy boxes, metal hardware. There's pictures from the Padron family archives on the box itself. And this cigar, I remember when I finished smoking it in November, I wrote down that this was probably the best cigar that I had at least evaluated for, you know, the work that we do here at Half Wheel, whether for the top 25 or whether for the reviews themselves. This, at that point, I guess, was the best cigar I had smoked to date for 2025, and I'm not surprised to see it here in the top 3. And like I mentioned, it is a cigar that is part of this series, and if you have not been to one of these events or seen some of the coverage here, Tobacconist of Greenwich goes all out and takes the idea of getting like an exclusive cigar to a completely different level. The events they do are massive. They have live bands. Padron did an auction where it brought some prototype cigars, as well as I think some vintage cigars. There was a barrel pick, so you could have a specific bottle, I think, of whiskey that was made for this release, or that was at least bottled for this release. And the packaging for this series, some of them are in like bundles, but like there's the next one I think is a Flor Dominicana release that has also very ornate and unique packaging. And the team over there in Connecticut is doing a great job with these private label releases. Patrick, I'm gonna be honest here, of all the companies that we sort of interact with, Padron's the one where it's the easiest and the most difficult flavor profile for me to describe, because on one hand, a cigar like this, which I believe it had the highest average flavor score, is like awesome, but it's very difficult for me to describe the differences between a lot of Padrons, because there's like a core Padron flavor and a lot of them have it. And is that your experience with this cigar? Obviously, like, we liked it a lot, so I'm curious to know if you picked up any differences or nuances from, sort of your standard 1926 64s.
Yeah, I think that was probably what did it for me. And I kind of harken back to that Liga Privada Year of the Snake, where it was rooted in a core Liga Privada profile, but it also had this different spin on it. That's what I found. I think a lot of us found in looking over kind of our summary notes. Again, there's the wood, the earth, the spice, but where it maybe took off and really stepped kind of outside the normal range of what a family reserve would taste like. Things like cloves, lemongrass, citrus, and peanut butter. And I think when you go back and read the announcement about this, this was a cigar that, while it wears the family reserve band, it was developed by both Padron and Tobacconist of Greenwich to ensure what was described as a one-of-a-kind expression that speaks to tradition and innovation alike. So I would be fascinated to know where those differences come in. But yeah, it was a cigar that held on to its roots, but also branched out to some different areas. And again, judging by the notes that I saw from our panel, that's what made this particular one shine. So that is, again, is the Padron Hammer and a Dream Natural, coming in at the number 3 spot. And it's time for number 2, and that comes from Pestana. It's San Andreas Bellicoso. This is the 4th core line from Pestana. As the name suggests, it uses a Mexican San Andreas wrapper, and that seems to be responsible for delivering a really solid earthiness in the early goings that earned points from our panel. But also where this one earned a lot of points was how it progressed. We had people getting notes of gingerbread at points, some sweet bread and creaminess, and then for one of our reviewers, a notably enjoyable starchy potato flavor that was singled out as their favorite part of this particular cigar. It also scored very highly in the construction category, second highest on the list, in fact, coming out of Fabrica de Tabacos Nicosueño. It's the only cigar from Nicosueño on the list this year, but it's the 9th cigar that the factory has put on our top 25 list since 2022, which is either at or right near the most. So congratulations to the Nicosueño folks. Brooks, I want to bring you in here. This is another solid cigar from Pestana, which has been making fairly regular appearances on our list lately.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed this, and it's not unusual for me to enjoy one of their cigars. Them and Roma Craft, I enjoy quite a number of their blends. So I was not surprised at all after smoking it that to see this at number 2. A couple of more points that I have here, a couple of interesting notes. This is one of the least 5 expensive cigars on the top 25 list. I don't have a price here, but it's definitely one of the 5 least expensive.
$13.50 according to the screen there.
In addition, there you go. Oh, it is right there.
Look
in
at
addition,
that.
While this is the 3rd year in a row that Pestana has had a cigar in our top 25 list, it is the first time that one of the company cigars has made it into the top 10. I'd also like to point out that it took me forever to learn how to say the company name, and I think I did okay. So, with all of that said, we have the number 1 cigar of the year, which is the Padron, a Hammer and a Dream Maduro. Now, I think that it goes without saying that it takes a great cigar to make it to the top of our list every year, and this cigar managed it very nicely with a combination of complex flavors, excellent balance, and amazing construction. Interestingly, I had the original review of the natural version of this, which made it in number 3. And while both are very, very, very good cigars, excellent cigars, I did find the Maduro version to be slightly more nuanced when it comes to the flavors, the secondary flavors, along with more sweetness on the retrohale and a little bit more balance overall. I normally enjoy the natural version of Padron cigars more than the Maduro, so I was a little surprised at this myself. But it's true for me, at least. Interestingly, when looking at the raw scores, the difference between the 2 blends came down to this. And while the flavor score on the natural version was very slightly higher overall for all of the reviewers, the Maduro version had absolutely perfect construction across all 4 reviewers. In fact, this cigar is the only one on this year's list that had 0 points taken away for construction issues, and that's one of the reasons that it made it to number 1. Patrick, what do you think?
Yeah, it's probably one of the questions I get asked most when talking about Padron is, are you a natural or a Maduro guy? And I have to admit, it seems to change with the wind. One cigar I'll smoke a natural, and then I'll be loving that. Then I'll go have a Maduro, and my opinion changes again. In this case, for as much as I liked the unique spin on the natural, I found the Maduro to be, I'll use my own words, sublime. Incredibly well balanced, creamy, rich, just the right amount of pepper. I mean, I said, luxurious, almost opulent was kind of how I think I described it. Some others mention it. It just is one of those cigars that just coats the palate, does everything right, plenty of flavor, nothing seems out of balance. The flavors are all, culinary level. It really just hit sort of all cylinders, at least for me, and I think for the panel as well. Some notes on this one again. Padron's 8th time on the list since we started back in 2012, but they've also made it each of the last 4 years. Earlier this week, Tobacco's Cubanica, which is Padron's factory, won our Factory of the Year. And this is the second year in a row where the Factory of the Year ended up producing the Cigar of the Year. Last year, Nica Sueño won our Factory of the Year, and Roma Craft won the Craft Maquette, won with the Craft Maquette La Mastranza. This has also happened 3 other times over the course of Half Wheel's awards. But again,
I'd like to just point out one note, Patrick, before you move on. For those of you that are wondering, when we vote on the Factory Company of the Year, Packaging of the Year awards, we do not know what the top 25 looks like. So it is an interesting trend for us, and the Factory of the Year is not some sort of it wouldn't be a participation trophy or whatever, but it's just an interesting thing that's happened. And I guess next year, if you're trying to make bets about the consensus on some sort of illegal gambling site, see who the Factory of the Year winner is.
Market. Come on.
Yeah. Predictions market.
Thank you.
And use that as your inside track. Sorry to cut you off there, Patrick.
No, you're good. And that is an interesting and notable point. It's not something that we vote on kind of retroactively to knowing what the list is going to look like. So we don't use the list to affect the Factory of the Year voting. But again, this is the top 25. Congratulations to Padron, and congratulations to all the cigar companies and the cigar makers and the rollers and the blenders and the sorters and the quality control people and everyone and the growers. I can't forget the growers. Everyone whose hands have touched the cigars that make it to this list, all very well deserved for any number of reasons. But again, all very, very good cigars. Again, there's your top 25. Congratulations to all involved.
So, as someone that consumes a lot of top 25 lists this time of year, the default comment on all of the lists are, well, this was just bought and paid for. So, if you're curious, here's the ones in orange are the companies that advertised with Half Wheel in 2025. At least one of them, maybe just the Pestaña. Pestaña did not advertise, but Cigar Hustler, which is owned by the same brothers that own Pestaña, did advertise, so we count that as an advertiser. There are 14 cigars on this list, so more than half of it that came from companies that spent money with Half Wheel in 2025. I believe this is the first time that we've had that many. If you're new here, you can go back and see our previous top 25 list, and you will see that this is... The advertising thing is not something that there's a direct correlation to. And
we can prove it.
I mean, I don't know if we can prove that there's not a direct correlation because it's trying to prove a negative. But the track record would be that that's not the case. If you think that it still is the reason why these cigars are on the list, then so be it. You probably shouldn't be reading Half Wheel unless you're doing it as a hate scroll thing. So. We've mentioned it throughout, but there are some companies here that had multiple cigars in the top 25. It's another unique feature. Not all top lists will allow for this, but here at Half Wheel, we don't care. There have been years where some companies have had 5 cigars on our top 25, and congrats to Dunbarton for sort of ranking the highest here with 3. But Davidoff, Plasencia, Padron certainly should get some credit here as well, as should everyone that makes the top 25. And if you're wondering about the factories, 5 factories here put multiple cigars on the top 25. Some of these factories have done this for multiple years in a row now. And so that should, give you an indication of, at least in the very, very top end, who's capable of making some excellent new cigars. So by country, we have, we don't know how many countries because we don't know where that Mirafel cigar came from. And if you're not familiar with flags of Central and Latin America, these are the countries that those flags associate with. And we also have some other statistics. We'll get to the donate. Well, I guess we can do this right now. So this is an annual tradition here. Brooks, do you want to take this? Because there's also somebody that asked why there's no Fuentes here. And I would argue that it's the same reason.
It's very difficult to get cigars. from Cuba.
New cigars,
New cigars.
in particular.
We have to, because of the way that we review things, we have to actually buy the cigars from a place that we can actually buy them from. We can't just get them if somebody send them to us. And so it's difficult for us to actually source Cuban cigars, and that's basically the reason, to be honest. We would love to do more Cuban cigars, as Charlie's mentioned many times, and we're going to make an effort to do more Cuban cigars this year, as we do every year. In fact, we have one on the docket. I saw that. Did Patrick send it to us?
He did.
After buying it, obviously. But I would love personally to see more Cuban cigars on there. And since I go to the festival every year, I would love to see more Cubans on there. And I think that there will be in the future.
And it's the same issue with Fuente. It's a supply and demand problem, especially with the new products. You know, if you're trying to go out and buy the Temple de Oro or the Don Carlos 90th at your local shop, like those probably came in and were instantaneously gobbled up. And it's the same issue. The Fuente one's a little bit easier to solve because we're based here in the U.S., but it's just very difficult to try to convince an LCDH to sell us new Cuban cigars when they're only getting 2 boxes and they don't know how many months it's going to be before they get any more, because we're not necessarily a regular customer that's buying PSD4s and Monty 2s. And so if you are a Cuban, an LCDH or a Habano specialist that would like to help us out, I'm certainly willing to take the help to try to improve that. So as far as some other statistics go, we've done this now for a few years. You can see sort of the pricing breakdown here, and we also have another slide here that breaks it down from 2024 to 2025. Patrick, RIP to the $10 cigar. Do you think we're going to see a sub $10 cigar on the 2026 list, or has price increases and tariffs made that sort of a no-go?
I'm always going to be sort of optimistic that the sub $10 cigar that lands on the list is not a dead trend. Thinking back to the packaging awards, that Punch Bottle Rockets came out, and that was under $8 in MSRP. I still think there are some out there that could potentially do it, but I'll be honest with you, not that I dabble in prediction markets or other forms of gambling. While I would like to be optimistic, I don't know if I would put $1 down to say that there will be a sub $10 cigar on the list next year or going forward.
That is unfortunate. And so this question came in here. I guess we probably should have said it, but we have a policy here at Half Wheel. It's been around for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years now. Every single cigar that we review, every single cigar that's on the top 25, we buy all of them. It would be easier if we took free samples for some of these cigars, because quite frankly, it's easier to get the manufacturer to send us free cigars than it would be for us to go out and buy them from a retailer. But that is the way that this works. And I bring that up because we bought some cigars for one of you, or maybe none of you in the chat, but one of our lucky readers. For the second year in a row, we're going to give away a sampler that's got one of every cigar in the top 25. And those are 5 of the ones that you saw us announce earlier. My plan is to put that post up on halfwheel.com this evening. So the top 25 will go up in the next 20 minutes or so. And then the contest post will go up later today. You'll have I think a full week at least, you'll have a full week to comment on it. 1 comment per person. All the rules will be explained in the post. And if you're the lucky winner, you're going to get a sampler that's got $700 plus worth of cigars in it. And some cigars that we think are really, really good, obviously. So that's the top 25 contest coming later today on Friday. And again, if you're holding out hope and praying to whatever lucky lottery god you pray to that you win the contest, this is what you'll win. One of each of the cigars mentioned there. Yeah, we did buy an extra Mirafell cigar just for you, just for the contest. It is what it is. But it's great, and I would love for the winner, if you do win, to go back and leave some feedback on the reviews or on the contest post about which was your favorite. It would be interesting to know kind of how you feel about how we did with the top 25. And it has been alluded to multiple times throughout here. The consensus, sort of the last of our awards week show. If you're unfamiliar with it, it has been going on. This is, I think, the 14th year of the consensus. What I do is I look at the various top 10, top 25 lists from cigar magazines, blogs, podcasts, YouTubers, etc., and I put them into one big spreadsheet, and we try to determine if there is a cigar of the year that Cigar Media, from a composite voting standpoint, would rank as its highest. If you are a cigar media content creator, producer, there's a post on Half Wheel that explains how you can get your list to be considered. There are over 40 lists that have already been entered into this year's consensus, and the deadline to get your list published so that it can qualify for the consensus is today at midnight Central Time. And I'll be back. It'll just be me on Monday, although Brooks is going to call in. Patrick will be in Nicaragua, so he's probably not going to call into the show. But it'll just be me. We're going to go through the top 25, or I'm going to go through the consensus 25 a lot quicker. It'll probably be done within like the first 15, 20 minutes is my hope. And then after that, it's going to be a full-on Q&A show. You can ask questions about the consensus. You can ask questions about our top 25 list, news stories that
I've
we've
got
written.
some good questions for you.
That's good. And I will try to answer them. So bring your questions, and we will, or I will get to them. And maybe, I guess, Brooks, if it depends on how long he sticks around. So anyway, for our team here at Half Wheel, the two guys on the screen, as well as Brian Bird, who checked in earlier. This is a lot of work. We obviously, as evidenced by the technical difficulties, not what we normally do, but we have tried to make some improvements to make this more enjoyable for you. And that extends to the top 25 list that we're about to publish. We have done some minor tweaks that I really think are going to make it a lot more enjoyable to read and to understand. A lot of those, like variability and why did this cigar finish in this place and not that place. We tried to answer those questions, as well as give you some, tasting notes that our review panel found, for you to try to take away if you were lucky enough to smoke some of the cigars that were on our top 25. Congrats to all of the winners. Patrick did a great job shouting out all of the different people that are involved with making these things. And for Brooks, Brian, and Patrick, my name is Charlie Minato. I will see you on Monday. Thank you.